strategies. So we will focus in on the self-regulation strategies near the middle and the end. And we're going to be going into a little bit about kind of what creates dysregulation. If you do have questions or thoughts throughout, you can let me know. This is supposed to be interactive, so if there's anything that comes up for you, I welcome that. You can write it in the chat. If I don't see it, definitely like raise your hand, and you can definitely come on the mic and ask questions, or if any thoughts come up for you. So, self-regulation strategies. First, we really got to understand what causes that dysregulation, and it's trauma, right? Trauma is the most avoided, ignored, belittled, denied, misunderstood, and untreated cause of human suffering. And when we think about trauma, a lot of times we think about these huge things, right? Like huge disasters, death of a family member, a car accident, a natural disaster, etc. And yes, those are traumatic events. But what oftentimes we don't understand about trauma is that trauma is not necessarily about the event that occurred. It is about the perception, it is about the experience of a situation being traumatic. And so that can be something as simple as, a parent is maybe 10 minutes late picking up their child from school or off the bus stop. And in that 10 minutes, the child can go through a series of feelings and emotions and body sensations and negative beliefs about themselves, like I'm forgotten or I'm unloved. And of course, that's not the parent's intention at that time, but this is that experience of the child. And so that can be a traumatic event, a traumatic occurrence. There's also trauma when it comes to relationships, right? And that's relational trauma. And that's a lot of what I deal with as a therapist. Is a lot of what I help people work through and help people heal, is that relational trauma. And that can be from caregivers, from early caregivers, even teachers, et cetera. The relationship that you have with them, whether it's toxic or, you don't have a voice in that relationship, or, you're belittled or put down, et cetera. So that can also create relational trauma, which oftentimes can be worse than a single incident trauma, and can kind of lead to CPTSD, which is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a lot of what I specialize in, and I work through and help people heal. And a lot of that, again, is our relationships. So here with this workshop, speaking to parents, speaking to teachers, we have relationships with kids and our own children, others, etc. And so it's so important that we create safety within those relationships. And safety isn't just like, the physical safety that we can kind of think about, but it's also the emotional safety. Does this person feel emotionally, psychologically, spiritually safe with me as a parent or caregiver, or do they not? And how do I create that safety? So this is an explanation of trauma that I hope that we can understand now as way more nuanced and way more, detailed than just, what we can normally think about when we think about trauma. Sometimes people will say, well, I haven't experienced trauma, and I let them know, well, if you're human, you have experienced trauma. And it's important for us to keep that in mind. So again, it's an experience that can be stressful, frightening, distressing, and that are difficult to cope with or out of our control. And this is something that's really important when it comes to trauma, is something that's out of our control, meaning we can feel as if we do not have any power in that moment. And oftentimes those are the most traumatic events, is when we feel powerless or helpless. And so imagine a child that we're trying to like calm down, or we're trying to discipline, or trying to help them understand something, and maybe they're not understanding. Uh, that can really seem like a powerless or helplessness event for the child, yes, for the parent as well. And so really paying attention to how do we kind of understand that and see that I'm going through that, and then pay attention and take care. So it can stem from one incident, ongoing events that happen over a period of time. It can definitely be a shock to the body's nervous system. And I'll talk a little bit about the nervous system because it's extremely important. It is not just mental health, right, that we're talking about. It's not just what's going on in the mind, but also the body is involved. And the body is very much involved, the brain and the nervous system as well. And this can put someone in a constant state of fighting for survival. And that's what I talk about when I talk about not feeling safe, because your nervous system feels as if there is a threat. And this can happen within relationships where the child can then feel like being in the presence of the parent is threatening. Maybe the parent yelled or got frustrated or, stormed out of the room. And now there's that sense of fear or worry in the child that that's going to happen again. And so we've got to work on repairing and rebuilding and making sure that my child, no matter what age, no matter what ability, I've got to kind of create that safety somehow so that they're not in that constant state of fighting for survival and that fight or flight mode, that the nervous system can go into. Are there any questions so far as we're moving along? Someone said they're not able to see the slides. Is everyone seeing the slides that I'm moving through? Yes?
I don't see them as you're moving through. I just see the first one, self-regulation strategies.
Oh, wow.
Maybe
Okay.
it's just me. Sorry.
Yeah, so I am moving through the slides. I'm surprised why it's not showing. Just a moment.
It isn't showing full screen for us, Sister Sadia. So are you in full screen on your end?
Yes, I'm in full screen and I'm moving through the slides.
Okay, so it seems like okay, now it just moved.
Now it moved, but is it full screen or no?
No, it's not.
Okay, so you know what I can do is maybe we'll just have to leave it like this. And let's see. Do you see this slide, the effects of trauma?
Yes, I see that one.
Okay, so I think I'll just leave it like this, minimized, and then move to the next one. This way you can see the correct slide. I apologize for that. Okay, so thank you for letting me know. Okay, so let me see, which one am I on? Right here. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, the other slides I was just talking about the things that were coming up. So here we can go to the effects of trauma. It can create that deep sense of fear and helplessness or disorientation, and overwhelms a person's ability to cope. And this is what we're really focusing on, is that dysregulation. So when dysregulation, this is what we're mentioning. Okay. Okay, so that fear and that helplessness, it is not just in the mind when we think about mental health, but it's in the body as well. So this is that agitation, frustration, anger, sadness, all of that is occurring, not just emotionally, but in the body as well. And what it does is it overwhelms a person's ability to cope, and ability to cope in whatever circumstances they're in. Maybe they've got to, have a conversation with someone, or, go outside the house, or, maybe it's a project or a homework assignment, and it becomes too difficult to even do something that we would think would be maybe a simple task. And so this is those effects of that dysregulation of the nervous system. So trauma and triggers, right? The child, or we can even talk about ourselves as adults, being on constant alert. And so this is when that you've gone through something traumatic, difficult, challenging, and now your nervous system, your body is on the state of constant alert. You're ready for the next yelling. You're ready for the next accident that could happen. You're ready for the next outburst. And so you're on this constant alert, right? Preparing for something bad to happen. And so that can be really detrimental to the nervous system. I'm going to talk about a little bit about that a little later. But what it leads us and kids as well to, it leads them to over interpret signs of danger. It might not even be a real danger, but now that it's something that they've gone through and they've experienced as traumatic, they're seeing it as, you know, a dangerous situation. And then there's this overreaction to normal situations. And I love that phrase, if it's hysterical, it's historical. A situation is hysterical, meaning, you know, there's yelling or screaming, or, you know, this sense of like, I don't understand what's going on. Then it's, you know, this overreaction to a normal situation. So someone asked if the sound is messed up. I believe maybe somebody's unmuted and there's background noise. So perhaps everybody can mute themselves if you're not speaking. And I think that would help because I do hear that background noise as well. Thank you. The next one is the trauma symptoms, right? Being able to recognize the symptoms in ourselves and in our children. So anxiety or panic attacks or jumpiness, right? When you hear a certain sound, when the door closes, or, you know, when you smell something, right? It relates to the five senses. You're very sensory, right? A lot of our kids can be, you know, very sensory. Like there's like a feeling of a fabric that they don't like and it's itchy. And so there's this discomfort. There can be a feeling of shame or intrusive thoughts, right? Feeling negative about yourself. Feeling like you cannot accomplish anything. All of this is trauma symptoms. It's not just, you know, only mental health or only, you know, a negative mindset or a negative sense of self, but it relates to something that we've gone through in the past. You know, maybe somebody has put us down, or, you know, we failed in something, right? So these are some of those symptoms that can come up. Chronic or ongoing depression, et cetera, et cetera. These are some of those symptoms. And this is something really important to keep in mind, this slide, trauma and social location. This relates to the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, and I highly recommend, if you haven't heard of it, to look it up and to read into it and to study it. It really started out as an obesity study, and then it ended up turning into an adverse childhood experiences study, because the majority and pretty much all of the participants had a difficult or traumatic childhood experience. And what they found was that these adverse childhood experiences led to, and you'll see that in the triangle on the left, led to social, emotional, cognitive impairment, adoption of health risk behaviors, disease, disability, and social problems, and early death. So it's so important for us to understand about ourselves and our children and the people in our lives. Have we experienced these adverse childhood experiences? And you can take the quizzes online. The study does have specific lists of those adverse childhood experiences, like incarceration of a parent, depression of a parent, mental illness of a parent, abandonment, etc., abuse, neglect. And so it's important for us to know this and to be aware also of like how we are interacting with our children, and are we kind of leading to this, or are we being mindful, and we're making sure that again, they have that safe and comfortable and happy environment. And then the one on the right also encompasses historical trauma, as well as racial, social conditions, generational trauma, etc. All very, very important stuff. A good book that came out recently addressing intergenerational trauma is called Breaking the Cycle by Dr. Mariel Bouquet. I highly recommend that. So how does this impact brain function, right? We know that we need that frontal lobe for thinking and reasoning and remembering. And so if we are in a state of fight or flight or freeze, that frontal lobe gets offline, right? So if you think of the brain like this, make sure you can see it. Yeah, the brain is like this. That frontal lobe, we kind of, if we're in that state of fight or flight or freeze, we flip our lid, right? And now the amygdala and the reptilian brain and the limbic system are all feeling, right? Feeling and sensing, and these anger and frustration and sadness and rage and all of these things are happening. And we're kind of losing that ability to rationalize and to think. And so when this is happening with our children, it's so important for us to see them as not purposefully misbehaving, not purposefully disrespecting me and defying me. It's about they have flipped their lid and they are not able to think, rationalize, calm themselves. They really need our help to get back into that frontal lobe, because right now they're in that limbic system, emotional, feeling, right, part of the brain, sensory, etc. And we've got to help them get back to calm, relaxation, regulation, so that now they can get back into their rational thinking brain. Okay. And we got to do that for ourselves as well. It happens to us. We may feel overwhelmed and frustrated. It is a lot to take care of children, and then children with special needs, and demands of society and culture. And there's so many demands on us as parents. We are going to also flip our lid. And so it's important for us to give ourselves those regulation strategies so that we can remain calm and be in our fully regulated state. Okay, and then the next one, moving on. Let's see if I can scroll. No, it's not scrolling. Just a moment. Okay, just do this way. Okay, so here is kind of a visual of the nervous system. And I like to show this visual because it really shows us all of the nerves that are going throughout the body. And so you can just imagine the different parts of the body that are being impacted when we are dysregulated. So when our nervous system is not regulated, when we're not in that state of being in control and being calm, our entire nervous system and our entire body is feeling it. So when we talk about headaches and stomach aches and nervousness and jittery feelings, this is all because of a dysregulated nervous system. And so the goal in life is to have a regulated nervous system, that we are in a regulated, calm muscle body, and we're able to be in control and have power over our words and actions, and helping our children to do the same. And so you can imagine which parts of the body are impacted by when the nervous system is affected. So, and this is that amygdala hijack, right? The amygdala, that like alarm system in the brain, kind of like hijacks our ability to think. And so the entire nervous system, look at all of these nerves, the entire body is impacted. So it's not just mental health, it's physiological health that we've got to keep in mind. Okay. And so we've got to talk about the stress response in the body. And this is where, it's important for us to understand what's going on in the body at those times. And I'll go through this quickly so we can get to the regulation tools. But this is the cortisol, epinephrine is released. There's an increase in our heart rate and blood pressure. There's a boost in glucose in the bloodstream. We shut down digestion, reproduction, the muscles contract. So it's important that we know that this is what's happening in the body of our children when they're throwing those tantrums, when they are, throwing something across the room, when they are, yelling or screaming. All of this is happening, in their bodies. And it's a lot for them to deal with. And they don't even understand half the time of what's going on. There's a boost in the immune response, and it can be elevated for 4 days, particularly in adults, but definitely in children as well. That stress response can stay elevated. So just think about that. Like, at what level are you're expected to kind of make decisions and remain calm and, be all zen when the stress response is elevated. So it can trigger a lot of body responses. And a lot of times, yes, and that's what trauma is. The brain doesn't know the difference between what is real and just thinking about it. So you can think about an experience you had years ago. You know, maybe there was an argument with your spouse, maybe there was an argument with your child, or maybe there was an outburst in a masjid that you went to, and everybody was looking and staring. And now, when you think about that, your body and your brain is going through the same dysregulated response as you did on that day. The heart starts to race, you start to get nervous, maybe your hands are sweating. And so the brain doesn't know the difference between the two. And that's why it's so important to heal what we've gone through in the past, because it's not just the past, it's impacting us in the present moment. So stress in the body long term, we'll go through this quickly. All the different parts of our body are impacted. And this is impacting our kids as well. Musculoskeletal, gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, endocrine, reproductive, right? So all of this is being impacted by that short-term stress, but that's ongoing, right? That chronic stress. And so it's that important for us to regulate ourselves. So I want you to take a moment, each of you, and just check in with your body right now. Just take a moment to just check in and let me know if there's anything that you're noticing as far as stress or tension. Is there anything that you're noticing there? If you just pay attention to your body. And you don't have to answer out loud, but it's definitely just something to notice. If I slow down a bit right now, I can kind of notice like a little bit of chest tightness, you know, maybe something further down in my stomach, a little bit of tightness. You know, there's a lot of things that we are talking about and that we're bringing up. And so, yeah, someone saying they're feeling the trauma they had years ago. Yeah. So even talking about it, right, can bring it up. And so it's so important that we take a moment to just pay attention to what's going on in our bodies. And this is something we can do with our children as well. And we get them used to it as well. Like, what do you notice in your body? And that word notice is really, really impactful because it leaves it, it leaves it open-ended. It's not just what are you feeling? Because what are you feeling might be a body sensation or it might be an emotion. What are you thinking? That points directly to the brain, right? And thoughts. But when we say, what are you noticing? It can be absolutely anything. It can be a feeling in your body and brain, body and nervous system. It could be an emotion. So we're allowing this open-ended question for the children to let us know what they're noticing. They might be noticing us in that moment. If we say, what are you noticing? They might say, oh, I noticed your smile, or I noticed your eyes. And so it's a very beautiful open-ended question to allow for us and for our children to explore and to really see and let us know what they're noticing. So yeah, just check in with your body right now and maybe just take whatever breaths are comfortable for you. I'm going to be teaching some breathing techniques. So whatever breath is comfortable for you, just take in a breath or two. It's good to inhale through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and to make a little noise with the exhale because your body is releasing the stress, releasing the tension, you know? So just take a breath in, whatever breath is comfortable, and then exhale with your mouth open. And just release and make the exhale longer than the inhale. And you may notice I like to put my hand on my chest, right? Because I really like to just give myself that presence, like I'm here and I'm here with you. And that can be really helpful, whether it's on your chest or even on your throat. A lot of times, you know, you can feel the vibration of your throat when you're breathing. A lot of times it's about giving yourself a hug, you know, squeezing your shoulders and reminding yourself that you're here. And these are all strategies that we can teach our kids as well, you know, that they can give themselves that love and that compassion. And it's super important, you know, to do that. Okay, so why do some kids struggle with self-regulation? And it's not some kids, it's all kids and it's all humans, right? Like we oftentimes we struggle with self-regulating. It's not easy. It's a lot of times it's our temperament, it's our personality. A lot of times it's, how we're interacting with our children, how children are interacting with their caregivers. Oftentimes children look to parents to be their external self-regulators, right? They watch us, they see us. What are we doing? And there's so much learning that happens in just that modeling behavior. So are we modeling calm? Are we modeling that we also deal with stress and that we also have to take time to self-regulate? When my child is looking at me, are they seeing that, I'm going like this? Maybe I'm rocking left and right because that left and right is soothing and it's that slow bilateral stimulation. It's connecting the midline of the brain, left and right sides. Are they seeing this, right? And then they can watch and they'll be like, oh, what are you doing? Or maybe they're just copying, right? And following, depending on their developmental level, depending on their age, etc. So are we modeling self-regulation and, calm? And it's so important for us to do that. So the key to learning self-regulation skills, and this is what you're doing now, so I'd like to congratulate you and celebrate you for being here and learning these self-regulation strategies, because we don't always know them and we're not taught them. It's important for us not to avoid difficult situations. Oftentimes it's just easier to avoid, but it will come back in some way or another, right? I let everyone know, if you're avoiding therapy, you're avoiding too much, because there's so much in our bodies and our brains and our nervous system and our history and our relationships that every single one of us are struggling in one way or another. You're not alone in your struggle. And that can give you that comfort, but can also point you to, hey, I've got to stop avoiding. I'm having this challenge with my child, right? I'm having this challenge in my parenting. Maybe it's in my communication with my child or children, but I can't avoid it because it's going to come back in some way or another. It's so important for us to learn these regulation strategies ourselves and then to coach our children through them. Coaching them as well so that they learn them and so that they implement them, especially when they need them most, right? And they might be at school, or they might be, when they're older working, and we're not going to be there with them to kind of coach them through it. So it's important to teach them and coach them so that they have these skills themselves. We've got to provide that supportive framework, which is a lot. It has a lot to do with language, right? Like, I'm here with you, I'm here for you, I'm here with you, etc. It's so important to do that. I do see a question in the chat, or I do see some messages as well, and I'll just read them. I love the concept of being intentional and body mindfulness and teaching this skill set to kids. Adults struggle with this as well, and it's great to teach it to our kids while they're young. Absolutely. Yeah. That body mindfulness, just being aware, right? And there's so many sheets that I have. If anybody's interested, I do have, a digital store on my website too of different sheets that allow for that awareness and that growth of self-esteem for kids. It's so important for us to really teach them. I never thought about this way. I can tell my child when I threaten her to throw the toys in the garbage. Yeah. And so what that can do is, even though that we may turn to that, we may turn to threats, or we may turn to like this punishment, what that can also do is to create that environment of fear, right? It can create that environment of fear. And what we want to do is create that environment of safety. And so let's using other strategies that can help to create that collaborative approach. It's like, hey, we're both having trouble here, not listening to each other. What can we do? And of course, developmental level and age and all that has to do with it. There's always ways that we can parent with love and with kindness and compassion, instead of turning to to punishment and threats. As far as tantrums, what are thoughts about ignoring it, paying less attention to it versus processing emotions in the moment, or a combination approach? So when it comes to tantrums, it's important for us to know that to remember that the child is dysregulated, right? The child is dysregulated. A long time ago, it used to be like, oh, they're throwing a tantrum. They're just, they're intentionally doing it. Just ignore them, or yell or scream at them or something like that. Whereas now, being trauma-informed parents, we know that they are dysregulated, meaning there's something going on in the body. Their heart might be racing. They might feel extremely hot. There's something going on. And so they're throwing that tantrum. And so what they need is a calm, safe place to land. And that can look different, right? I have a 7-year-old daughter. And so what I'll do outside of a tantrum is like, when you're throwing this tantrum, what do you need? Sometimes they can tell you, sometimes they can't, but it's really about calming them and giving them that safe place. And a lot of times it looks like, again, depending on your child, it looks like just holding them and hugging them and saying, I've got you. So they're thrashing around and they're throwing things and they're yelling and they're screaming, and it's just holding them, hugging them and saying, I've got you. I've got you. You're okay. You're okay. I'm here. Right. So just really saying, I'm here. Other times it's reminding them to breathe and say, hey, let's breathe. Let's breathe. Or you start to do the tapping with them. And that's some of the skills that we're going to be going over too, like that slow tapping. So sometimes it's just maybe getting behind them and then just slowly tapping their left and right sides of their body so that they kind of calm down. So it's definitely about trying different things, but number one is understanding it's not intentionally being done. They are not like defying you or disrespecting you. It's literally dysregulation in the body and the nervous system, and they need your help to help calm them down. A question also here is, what is the long-term treatment for relationship trauma? Definitely trauma, a trauma-trained therapist and therapy. I'm trained in EMDR, so I highly, highly recommend EMDR. I am biased, but it really is completely healing. And it's not only something that I do with my clients, but I've been in EMDR therapy for many, many years myself. And so I believe in it, and it is incredibly healing. Okay, so there are definitely some private questions. I'm not sure if I should read them out loud, the direct message to me. So I think from here, I'll pause and I'll continue with the presentation, and then maybe you can let me know if that's something I should do. There's definitely some direct private questions, but I'll continue for right now and I'll pause and we'll definitely get to them. Either I can message you privately or we can talk about it at the end when the recording stops. Okay, so the key to self-regulation skills, continuing on, is learning to handle these challenges on our own, right? As adults, calming ourselves, calming the nervous system, and then helping children who are capable, who have the ability to learn these skills on their own, right? So that, again, when they're alone or when they're not with us, that they can continue to use those strategy, right? And definitely children with special needs, it's really knowing where they're at and what their abilities and capabilities are, and helping them through that. I'll skip over the example. So it's so important to help ourselves and our family become self-reflective. So we talked about that body awareness, but it's also about how we interact with each other. So feedback has got to be non-judgmental, and I wouldn't say non-emotional. I'll definitely change that slide because nothing is non-emotional. I will take out the non, because we are human beings and we are so completely emotional, and there's nothing wrong with it, right? It's what makes us human, what's makes us beautiful. So feedback is non-judgmental. That's important. Trying to remove judgment and criticism and blame from our conversation, because that creates shame in a person, and shame leads to a negative inner dialogue. So if we're saying like, you always do that, and like, why do you do that? And I hate when you do that, and I can't stand. So this kind of language can really create that negativity within and shame and make a person feel bad about themselves. We've got to have maybe family meetings, right? Shouldn't just be one person dealing with everything and making all the decisions and dealing with all the stress. It's got to be a family affair where we are maybe having a weekly family meeting, sitting down and really discussing about like, how did we handle this week? And was it, you know, were we regulated, right? And did we take care of each other, and were we kind to each other? Or, you know, what happened this week? So what went wrong and why, and how we can kind of fix it or prevent it next time. So it's super important to have these proactive conversations. Slowing down is so essential. Slowing down allows children to become more thoughtful, reflective, and self-aware. Oftentimes, you know, there's an argument between two siblings, or you know, there's a spat between a child and a parent, and we just keep going with the arguing, or the you know, the he said, she said, and you know, like, we just keep going. And it's so important for us to slow down, and that just requires a word, right? It's like, hey, you know what, we aren't listening to each other. Let's take a moment. Let's slow down a bit. You know, I notice things are getting heated. Let's take a breather. So it just takes that pause, right? There's power in the pause. So pausing and taking a breath. Hey, I'm noticing I'm getting really frustrated. I'm noticing I'm getting angry. I don't want to get even more angry. I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to take a breather, right? Like, I'm just going to breathe, and I will come back to the room in a few minutes. So slowing down allows us to be more thoughtful, reflective, and self-aware. It's absolutely essential. So self-soothing to self-regulation. Here are some breathing techniques. It's so important to self-soothe. And this way we're teaching our kids to do that as well. A breathing technique, there's the S and the V breathing. So the S breathing is that you inhale however normally you'd like to inhale, and then you exhale with the S sound. So we can try that now if you'd like. Inhaling however you want. And then you exhale with the S sound. Just take a moment to notice the difference. And let's do that one more time. And for me, when I breathe with using the S sound, I notice an immediately like a calming or a relaxing of the nervous system. And I hope you notice that as well. The next one is the V breathing, which is inhaling however you normally do, and then exhaling with the V sound. Okay, so you can try that now with me. Inhale. And you can notice that that vibrates the nervous system. It resets the nervous system. And it's a very helpful way to, again, calm the nervous system. Okay, so that's S and that's V breathing. Sometimes I can only do the V breathing once because it's very strong. It's very powerful. It like shakes your nervous system. And self-soothing touch. That's another one. Whatever that soothing touch is, I told you about BLS, which is bilateral stimulation. And that is a way to calm the nervous system. It's research-backed, evidence-based that it works to calm the nervous system. And so it's slow left and right tapping, and it's 6 to 12 taps. And then you just pause and you notice. Okay, so however you want, you can do it like this. You can do it with your feet, right? Your left and right tapping of your feet. You can hold something. I don't always like phone, but if you have a pen, you can do something like this, and you're holding a pen and you're going left and right. And then the swaying also, right? And that's something that we can do with kids. A lot of times when kids are dysregulated, they're swaying front and back. This is dysregulation, but it's also like trying to self-soothe. And what we can do is we can try to get them to go left and right, because left and right is going to help them faster. It's going to help them to calm their nervous system and to self-soothe. There's a lot of children, you know, with special needs, and you know, they're doing these natural ways of self-soothing, and it's just about us modeling, you know, something that can help them even more. So that's self-soothing touch. It can be any kind of self-soothing touch, right? Sometimes it's just like patting on the shoulder. If we're noticing they're getting dysregulated, like give some self-soothing touch, you know, just touch on the hand or, you know, on the shoulder, on the back, and just rub and soothe. Mindful walking. And again, walking is also that bilateral stimulation, right? It's that left and right, calming exercise. Why do people really enjoy walking? It's because it's that bilateral, that connection of the, you know, the between the midline of the brain. And so mindful walking is important. The Prophet ﷺ said, if one of you gets angry and he's standing, then he should sit down until his anger subsides. If not, then he should lie down. And so this already tells us that emotional health is not just emotional, it's not just mental, but it's physical as well, right? We learned that from the Prophet ﷺ. Different types of self-care, and I'll just go through these quickly. Physical, emotional, social, spiritual, personal, space, financial, work. There's so many different ways of taking care of ourselves and our children and teaching them to do that as well. That the physical, it's so important. Like, are you hungry? Are you sleepy? You know, those are basic needs that can really lead to dysregulation. It can lead to like, I am not okay and I'm not calm. So making sure that we're getting those in there. Emotional, are we being kind to ourselves? Are we being kind to our children? We've got to create an environment of emotional, physical, spiritual, everything safety. So even though our minds want to go sometimes to discipline and punishment, it's about love and kindness and consequences, yes, and gentle parenting, meaning gentle mindfulness, because that discipline is important too, but it's got to be with safety, with a gentleness and a kindness and caring. Spiritual, of course, whether it's prayer or, you know, the physical is an important exercise, even for ourselves, yoga, Pilates, working out, meditation, etc. It's so important for us to do these. And I apologize if you hear the noise in the background coming through my window. So definitely keeping all of this in mind. Space is important. Sometimes we need that space from each other. We can't always be together 24/7, and we do need a bit of space. And so being able to lean on support, right? Reach out for help with our children, with caretaking, even if it's for 10 minutes, even if it's for half an hour, and giving ourselves,
Minnie, you doing good?
giving
Want me to
ourselves,
help you? Or are you good?
I'm sorry, if you can just mute yourself if you're not at the mic. Thank you. So definitely it's important to always to keep that in mind, that space, right? So where we feel secure, where we feel safe, where we can give each other that kind of mental break, right, from ourselves as well. Self-care also includes that quality time together. Don't let the time that you have together always be one in which people are frustrated or people are yelling or it's stressful. You want to create quality time together where there's love and kindness and fun and laughter, so that it really does create that safe space for open discussion. And being inviting, you know, that you can come to me for anything, that I'm here for you. And when we need professional assistance, reach out. You don't have to deal with it on your own. There's professionals for a reason. And, Allah's given them to us. And so it's so important to be able to do that. The dhikr as well, right? We know all those benefits of that. That can be a self-regulating tool and a regulating tool for kids, giving them the beads as a sensory object and just to move through them and to say, whatever dhikr is calming and relaxing. You pick your favorite one and you just repeat it over and over again. You can say it out loud, and that's also a self-regulating tool. So knowing that our bodies have rights over us, our health is a trust, and we've got to take care of it all. Communication techniques. This is essential too, because this can help with regulating ourselves. This can help with creating that safe environment, is that we have that active listening, right? That I'm here to listen to you, not just to give you a lecture, not just to tell you what I want you to hear, but I'm here to listen. And this is essential in creating that safe environment as well. And a lot of times as parents, we do need to be quiet, and we do need to listen more and just to hear what they're saying, whether we understand them or whether we have our own judgmental biases. It's important to give them that space so that they feel heard. And that's that active listening. Like, I'm hearing you, and we're responding with, I hear you, and tell me more. And what was that like for you? And I can't even imagine what that must have been like. Um, I don't even understand what you go through, and I could never understand, and, help me to understand. So all of these phrases of active listening are extremely important. It's important for everyone to feel heard and understood. And asking our kids this, asking our kids and what do you love most about our relationship? And, what do you like? Do you like hugs? Do you like, when I make you food? So really just connecting and using these communication techniques are important, especially when it's adult to adult, because the kids are listening, right? The kids are listening. And so creating that environment, not just between parents and children, but that environment in which we are kind and loving to each other. Spiritual strategies, right? Tawakkul, relying on Allah, that's extremely important. Knowing that He's there for us and He's taking care of us. And no matter what we're going through, He never burdens us more than we can bear. And He knows our capacity, right, to deal with things. And then He's going to get us through that. So trusting ourselves, grounding ourselves in our belief system, believing in ourselves as parents, and really knowing that we're trying our best and we want the best for our children. And so believing good about yourself is super important, and building that self-awareness, evaluating your actions at the end of each day. Would the Prophet ﷺ act like this? And, would he be proud of me if he walked in that door, right? So evaluating ourselves, but also having that compassion for ourselves as well. So it's holding ourselves accountable, yes, because I never want to harm or hurt my child in any way in which they would have to heal from that trauma later on. And, I'm accountable to Allah, right, for all of my actions and the way I treat my child and my children, and, how I take care of everyone and myself. So just always keeping that in mind. Strengths and resilience is important to focus on. Name them, right? Like, oh, I love how you smiled at your sister today, right? Or it was so nice of you to offer that last piece of the chicken nugget, right? So acknowledging it and mentioning it, this can create that atmosphere of appreciation and love. And the relationship expert, the Gottmans, they talk about that a lot, about how we have to have 5 positive statements to counteract every 1 negative statement. So use that in your household. For every 1 negative statement or harmful statement or mean statement, I've got to back it up with 5 positive ones. And so it will lead me to say negative things less and less. So let's help ourselves see and build strengths in others, and amplify natural talents and interests, and, always remind each other of that love and care, and building that sense of safety, that we all want to be in a calm muscle body. And so paying attention to how we can calm ourselves, the breathing techniques, the bilateral stimulation, the exercise, the walking, the meditation, the prayer. Let's do, and then sometimes with kids, it's like the butterfly tapping, right? It looks like a butterfly. And so you just do the butterfly tapping. They like that. And sometimes the S and V breathing can be snake breathing. I guess V could be like vulture breathing. So it's so important to like involve the kids in all of these ways of self-regulation. So this ends my presentation, going over self-regulation techniques. This is all of my information. You can always reach out to me for anything, any questions or thoughts or suggestions. You can book a session right on the website. For anybody in Florida, New York, and Michigan, I offer therapy, but everybody all over the world, I offer coaching. So if there's parent coaching, self-regulation coaching, you just need maybe one session to kind of go over these skills and practice them with me. If you want to talk about your parenting techniques, your parenting styles, and you need help with that, you can do a coaching session. It doesn't have to be a long-term thing. So I highly recommend reaching out, and I'd love to help. So I will answer any questions that you have. And I do have some direct questions here, so I will go over them. We just have a couple of minutes, actually.